This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
Let us hope that all of the demons of Week 17 have been expelled already across the two clunkers on Christmas Day and the 6-3 final last night. Hopefully, the bad football is done and over with. We're going to talk some player props for today. Maybe we should just talk all unders at this point, I guess, based on the way things have gone. We're going to talk to Aidan Cotter, though, about his favorite player props across Week 17, previewing a big game between the Broncos and the Bengals on Saturday, a game where the Bengals need to win. Broncos trying to lock up a playoff spot as well. Then we'll dive into the other Saturday games, taking a look at the Sunday slates and touchdown props and much more to get you ready for Week 17. Welcome on into Covering the Spread, a FanDuel Research podcast. My name is JimSannes. I am a managing editor for FanDuel Research, joined here as mentioned by Aidan Cotter. You can find him on X at AidanCotterFD. Check him out on Blue Sky at Aidan Cotter and find his work over at FanDuel Research, where he is a writer for us. Aidan, you're in Chicago. Last night happened. How you doing today?
Yeah, last night happened. Football was played. Those are all things that are true.
Allegedly. You say it's true, but are you sure about that?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think we're all ready for the season to be over here. It's just, there's really just not much you can say about this team. We need to reset, but you know what? Hopefully we got some better football over the weekend. There's something about having a full week of practice. I think that might give us a little bit better games over those 2 or 3 days that are Christmas and last night went. So hopefully we get some better games here.
I personally was not too mad about it because I had the under in that game and I was driving to Minnesota and I asked my wife for a score update. She said 6-3. And I said, okay, cool. How much time is left? I was like, okay, I shouldn't have to sweat this under. But she was like, it's done. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So we're just going to go under by a mile and make it the least sweatiest game of all time, which, I guess that maybe that's a good omen. Maybe we take that as a good omen as opposed to bad football being a bad omen.
Yeah, no, we're making the right reads. That's what I would take away from last night.
All right, I can live with that. Hopefully we can make some more right reads today here on the show. As mentioned, we're going to preview in depth that Broncos-Bengals game. Didn't get to discuss in yesterday's show, so we'll dive into that one here in a second. Talk about the other two games on Saturday. Also pretty fun. Get to watch some Drake May, Justin Herbert action. Then the Rams and the Cardinals, with the Rams trying to lock down a playoff spot there. But we'll dive into the Saturday slate too, talking yardage bets, touchdown bets, and Aidan's top same game parlay for Week 17. But first, a reminder to make sure you are subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts. Already broke down NFL Week 17 best spreads and totals with Megan Payton of FanDuel TV, getting her read on this week's key games. Went in depth on the Packers, Vikings, and other bets that Megan likes for this week at FanDuel Sportsbook. Find that on the Covering the Spread podcast feed, but also over on our brand new YouTube page, where later on today we'll break down NFL DFS Week 17 with myself and Brandon Gadula. That'll be live on the YouTube page at noon Eastern, so subscribe there, turn on notifications, and leave us a thumbs up if you like what you hear. As always, we appreciate those of you on watching here on YouTube for today. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways to help you to pick up a W. Not only can you bet on who will win the game, but FanDuel also has bets for which players score a touchdown, how many points each team will score, and so much more. This way, you'll be all set for the biggest games of the year. Make every moment more. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas, an affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, for 18 plus and present in DC. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Let's start things off here, Aidan, by talking about that big Saturday game between the Broncos and the Bengals. Bengals need a win to stay alive, also need some help, so not a win-and-in scenario for them, but they're facing a team they need to lose in the Denver Broncos. So let's start things off, Aidan, talking about this game specifically. Any props you like as the Broncos take on the Bengals on Saturday?
Yeah, on paper, like this game is set up pretty well. Like you said, they're both battling for that final playoff spot in the AFC. And Cincinnati, if they lose, they are officially eliminated. It's felt like they've been eliminated for like now, but they are still technically in it. It has the second highest total on the slate, which was kind of surprising to me. I guess just given how good the Bengals offense is and how bad their defense is. So we're definitely expecting to get some points. I can't say personally, like I'm super bullish on this game. Like not. We know that the Bengals have a great offense. The Broncos defense, the first half of the year was absolutely dominant. Then they lost Riley Moss, their second defensive back, and you definitely saw the holes. I mean, that Browns game tells you everything you need to know. But he is supposed to be back this week. He's been practicing, and that makes me a little more nervous to buy into these Bengals props. Not because I don't think they could have big games and go off, but they're already so high because they've been playing so well. I don't think I really want to buy into this Bengals passing attack. But I do think this is another good spot where we can back Chase Brown. I mean, he has been so good. So I think the first thing we're going to look at here is Chase Brown over 26.5 receiving yards. So the last two games, he has not been super involved in the passing game. He's been held under this mark, but he still has 3 receptions in both of those games. Before that, he cleared it in 5 straight games after taking over full time following Zach Moss's injury. But even with those 2 quiet games, he's still averaging nearly 5 receptions and 40 yards per game since Zach Moss went down. He's commanded 14% of Joe Burrow's targets over that stretch. And so there's a ton of volume coming his way for a team that leads the league in raw pass rate and pass rate over expectation by a pretty healthy margin. And so assuming that Cincy continues to drop back a ton on Sunday, Brown is going to have a chance to have another big game. And like I said, the Broncos do have this elite secondary, especially with Riley Moss back. And while they have given up some production lately, his return, I think, could funnel a lot more of that work to the short areas of the field. And especially, we've seen Burrow is very comfortable targeting Chase 4 or 5 yards down and just letting him get yards after the catch. And so we've also seen that Denver has been a little susceptible to running backs, especially pass catching running backs. On the season, just total numbers, they've given up the second most running back receptions and third most running back targets, and they're bottom 10 in yards per route run. So I do think this is a nice spot for him in a game where, like, I'm not super excited. I want to go full fade on the Bengals passing attack, but I think this is a good way to get in there on a number that isn't super outrageous.
Yeah, I agree with you on your overall thoughts for this game, where I think that it could be lower scoring. I should take the under into this one personally, but I do think we'll see them pass the ball still, because the Broncos are good against the rush, ranking 3rd there based on number fires metrics. But like you said, we should see a larger share of the targets go to the non-receivers when you got Riley Moss back out there and Patrick Surtain II to you can't shut down Chase and Higgins, but you can at least make them less nuclear than they typically are. And that could benefit Chase Brown. So Chase Brown's mark 26.5 over for him is -113. I think that the overall read on your game, I agree with, but also like the specific way to attack it, I'm on board with too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like you said, we don't want to totally full fade Joe Burrow with the way he's playing right now. And Jamar Chase and T. Higgins both could go off. But if there's going to be a team that is going to slow them down and keep them pretty mild production, I think it would be the Broncos, this version of the Broncos.
All right, so Aidan is on Chase Brown over 26.5 receiving yards at -113. Couple other fun Saturday games. Got the Chargers and Patriots and the Rams and the Cardinals. Any other props you like across Saturday, Aidan?
Yeah, so in this Rams-Cardinals game, I think this prop is probably my favorite of the weekend, and it is Matthew Stafford over 232.5 passing yards. So, like, Arizona has been eliminated. All they can do is play spoiler. And the Rams, if they win, they clinch the division. If not, they have to play a winner-take-all against the Seahawks next week. But I don't think this is going to be a spot where, like, the Cardinals are going to roll over. And because neither defense is, like, especially impactful, I wouldn't be surprised if we get some points for both sides. And so in what I'm expecting to be like a more high-scoring game, I think this is a spot where we can see the Rams get a little more volume and kind of, like, stretch him out a little bit more than they have in recent weeks. So he's averaging 238 yards for the season. He's gone over this prop in 8 of 15 games overall. But if you just look at the games since Puka Nacua has been back from injury, he's averaging 242 yards, and he's gone over this 6 of 9 games. And so we know this offense is rolling right now and that they need to win. And I don't really see Stafford having a ton of issues against the secondary now that he has his pass catchers back. The Cardinals are 25th in number 5 schedule adjusted pass defense metric, and they're giving up a pretty league average 215 passing yards per game, but they are bottom 10 in yards per attempt, and they have given up the highest completion percentage in the NFL, which I just think about that. And what I know about Matthew Stafford as a quarterback is like, yeah, this is a good spot. Like, he should be able to cook here. But I think the biggest thing is, like, if you remember back in week 2, the Cardinals absolutely stomped the Rams.
Yeah.
Like, it was after the Rams played pretty well against the Lions. And I know they didn't have Nacua and the Cup got hurt in that game, but it was like, I mean, it wasn't even close. Marvin Harrison just destroyed them in the first quarter, and they just did not look back. And like, just knowing how big of a competitor that Matthew Stafford is, it would not surprise me at all if he is going into this game like, okay, this is time, like, the division rival, like, big game, we can clinch the division, and come out just chucking. And like, even in that game that they got destroyed, he still threw for 215 despite losing by 30 and missing his top 2 receivers. And so I think in kind of a revenge spot with playoffs on the line, I think this is a really nice spot for Stafford. And I mean, we've seen him, he has a ceiling for passing yards, right? Yeah. Like, we've seen him flirt with 300 yards. And so 232.5 in this kind of a game is something I can definitely get behind.
Yeah, they're at home, indoors. Good matchup for them against a bad pass defense. That number for Stafford, 232.5, over is -113. I also do agree with you in the overall sentiment with this game. Took the over for this one personally, but also I like Puka Nacua, 100+ receiving yards, +142 at FanDuel Sportsbook there. I think that's a pretty fun one as well. Nakua's gone 100+ in 4 out of 9 games, including 3 out of 4 at home this year. Okay, Aidan, let's talk about the Sunday slate now. Let's start things off with yardage props. Which yardage props are you targeting across Week 17 at FanDuel Sportsbook?
Yeah, so the first one I'm looking at here is in the Bills-Jets game. We're going to be looking at James Cook. So he actually does not have a rushing yards prop up right now, but he does have a rushing plus receiving, which I think is actually my preferred way to play him. So right now it's at, I believe, 75.5.
76.5, yeah.
76.
Right,
so we've gone up a little bit. The people are starting to buy in, but I just think this is a spot where we saw Josh Allen get banged up last week. And I mean, he's been banged up all season. He's Josh Allen. He's always like got a little something.
Right.
And we know I'm assuming he's going to play through it. I would be pretty surprised. And I would be pretty surprised to see him not play, but it's also a situation where they already have the division clinched and they just need to win one out of this week against the Jets and next week against the Patriots to get the number 2 seed. Is this really a game where we're going to see Josh Allen throw the ball 45 times and score 5 touchdowns? Like, I mean, maybe he's Josh Allen, but I lean more towards this is going to be more of a James Cook game. And if you look, like, James Cook has only missed 1 game this season, and it was actually against the Jets, but he did play them last year towards the end of the year when his role was really starting to pick up. And he went for over 100 against them there. And that was when his role was not as good. And the offense was starting to move in the right direction, but their Jets defense was definitely better at that point last season. I mean, this is a line where Cook has cleared this in 3 of the last 4 games since they came out of their bye, and he's done it in 9 of 14 games overall. And I think part of the reason it gets so low, it's not higher, is that when he doesn't go over it, he doesn't go over it, like, not even close. Like, he 30, 40 yards, kind of scripted out of the game. But he's still averaging 84 scrimmage yards per game on the season. And then in this kind of matchup, I think this is where they're really going to want to feed him. I mean, the Jets have just fallen apart on defense. Since they fired Robert Saleh after week 5, they're dead last in schedule adjusted defense. And they have struggled to limit opposing backs over that same span. Since they fired Saleh, they've given up the 5th highest rushing success rate to running backs. And so I think if we're seeing the Bills early on give Cook the ball, get him early down touches, and he's just consistently picking up positive gains, I think they're going to want to continue feeding him the ball, especially with how banged up Josh Allen is. So, like, I would not be surprised if we see Cook flirt with like 20 touches, but at the same time, we know how explosive James Cook is. Last week, he rushed for over 100 yards on 11 attempts. And against how bad this Jets defense has played of late, I think this is a nice spot to attack a game script that I actually like, where the Bills are big favorites. They're at home. Josh is a little banged up, and James Cook has been rolling. And so I think this is a nice spot to attack him, rushing plus receiving, which also covers us in the event that the Jets do keep things close. But James Cook is still involved in the passing game, even if they're not running the ball as much.
And I think that's a key too, where you're going to get him potentially involved regardless of what the script may wind up being. With Cook, a player who's so dependent on efficiency, I would typically want to go towards an alt market. They're not posted right now, but in general, I'd want to. But I think here specifically, I would not, kind of like you're doing here with the baseline market, because there is a chance that, let's say they do build a lead, that we could see Ray Davis mix in more. We could see more Ty Johnson. And this one's already gone up to 77.5 as we're talking here. So people still buying into James Cook as we are on air. But I think that the baseline market is the preferred route, despite the fact he is hyper volatile, just because we could see him get out of town if they do build a lead in this situation. So I agree with you where the baseline number preferred way to go for James Cook, 77.5 now, that number. You still okay at 77.5?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. That's a minus 114 right now for James Cook. All right, Aidan, let's talk some touchdown props. Across the Sunday games, which touchdown props are catching your eye?
Yeah, so we can go over to this Commanders-Falcons game, which I am personally pretty interested in just as a spectator. So I don't really want to get anything on the Falcons just because I still want to see stuff from Penix, but just getting to see those two rookie quarterbacks is going to be a lot of fun. And there is one rookie quarterback that we have seen quite a bit of, and that is Jaden Daniels. And he has been feeding his number one wide receiver, Terry McLaurin, a ton lately. And so at plus 105 this week, I really like this spot for Terry again. This feels like a match made in heaven for Terry, especially with how he's played of late. The Commanders have like one of the higher implied totals of the week at 26, and they're going against a Falcons defense that's given up the second most passing touchdowns. And 20 of those 28 passing touchdowns that they've given up have gone to the wide receiver position, which is tied for the highest in the NFL. Now, I mean, we're definitely buying high on McLaurin here, even at plus 105, just because he has scored 6 times in the last 4 games. He has 2 games in the last 2 of his last 4 games. He's caught 2 touchdowns. Like, he is going crazy right now. But I still think I can get there at plus 105, given how much red zone work he has gotten of late. So for the season, he leads the Commanders with a 23% red zone target share and 43% end zone target share. But over the last 4 games, the red zone target share has jumped to 33%. And when you combine his end zone and red zone targets, he's averaging over 2 looks a game. And when you have a quarterback who's playing as well and as efficiently as Jaden McDaniels is, and we know this offense can put up points on anybody, I'm not super impressed with the Falcons defense. I don't think we need to be afraid of the Falcons defense. They have a good corner, but we've seen Terry play super well all year, and he is running a little bit hot in the touchdown department. But this is one of those instances where I actually do want to buy into this, even though he is kind of outperforming expectation, just because of how good the matchup is and how funneled the offense is towards him, I guess. Him and Jaden, where they don't really have a whole lot. I mean, they just lost Noah Brown. I don't know what Zach Ertz is. I don't believe Zach Ertz is playing this week.
He's good to go, but De'Ami Brown might not. De'Ami Brown hasn't practiced either Wednesday or Thursday, and it's like they got nowhere else to go. Alameda Zaccheaus has played well this year, and it is I would mention it, an Alameda Zaccheaus revenge game. Let us not overlook that, but like they just don't have a lot of places to go. And also, like, I don't tend to like tight ends against the Falcons defense because of their safety play is tremendous. So I think that it just funnels more work towards the receivers, and Terry is the kind of guy who can take advantage in a pretty massive way.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen him reach for multiple touchdowns like very recently. And so I think just getting one here with how high the implied total is, and like you said, they are down several pass catchers. I really like the spot, even at plus 105.
Yeah, plus 105 is a short number for a receiver, but it makes sense when it's Terry McLaurin in this matchup specifically. I also did lay the points with the Commanders, so I am in with you in buying into this offense, buying into Jaden Daniels, buying into Terry McLaurin. We're all in on the Commanders. What could possibly go wrong for Sunday night as they take on the Falcons? But Aidan is on Terry McLaurin plus 105 to score in that game. Okay, Aidan, across the entirety of Week 17, what is your favorite same game parlay for this week?
So I think like the really obvious spot for a same game parlay is this Vikings-Packers game, but we don't have a ton of props up there right now. We're still waiting on some stuff with the Packers receivers, which feels like a weekly thing. Never really know what's going on there. But instead, I want to go back to that Bills-Jets game.
Mm-hmm.
So the Bills are favored by 8.5. And like, I don't hate that, but there's something about watching, and I think Drake May is very good, but he carved up that Bills defense last week, and Rodgers has been kind of frisky lately. I wouldn't say good, but like he's been fun, more fun than he was earlier in the year. And so I think I want to start with like an alt spread. So we'll go Bills -6.5. So they just have to cover the touchdown here. Obviously, Buffalo and New York have had dramatically different seasons. Even though the Bills only beat the Jets by 3, if you can remember that earlier in the year, they have gone in completely opposite directions since that game. In the 10 weeks since these teams last met, the Bills are 8-1, the Jets are 2-7. Buffalo has the league's top schedule adjusted offense during that stretch, and New York's defense has plummeted to 31st. Like I said earlier, it's dead last since they fired Saleh. And the Bills' defense is also bottom 10 across that sample, and the Jets have been a pretty average offense over that stretch. But we've seen 3 of their last 7 losses have come by 7+ points. So it's not like they're getting blown out every game. But when they face good teams, like they're the New York Jets, they're not well equipped, especially this version of the Jets with this defense, to keep things close against teams that really do know what they're doing and have a pretty clear vision of like the Bills need to win this game, want to win this game. We know it's in Buffalo. And over the last 8 games, 5 of Buffalo's 8 wins have come by at least a touchdown. And so they have been shown the ability to cover the spread consistently. And so I am expecting Buffalo to lead throughout here, but that doesn't mean the Jets won't be able to get anything done. And I think that kind of goes by what I was saying about Drake May last week, where he looked really good. And we've seen Rodgers' passing yards kind of tick up as the season's gone on. I mean, last week was not pretty against the Rams, but we've seen him reach for high 200s into 300 yards. And Buffalo's secondary is really, really holding them back right now. I mean, they're 31st in adjusted pass defense over the last 5 games, and that's coincided with New York's offense kind of coming to life. Over that stretch, they're 9th in pass rate over expectation. So with the season kind of done, they're kind of just gave the keys to Rodgers and was like, man, like just cook, like feed Devontae Adams as much as you want. Like we have nothing else really going for us here. And so he's cleared 250 passing yards in 3 of the last 5 games. And so getting his passing yards at 222.5 is not an especially high bar to climb, especially if the Jets find themselves trailing early and they need to go to the air even more than they were before. And again, when they played earlier in the year, Rodgers did have 294 passing yards in a competitive game. And granted, like 50 of those came on a bomb to Allen Lazard at halftime, a Hail Mary. But even with those 50 yards, he was comfortably over this mark. And so I think in a game where I expect the Jets to trail pretty early, I do like Rodgers to be able to rack up kind of some garbage time passing yards. And even if they keep things close, like I still think that winning by a touchdown, covering that 6.5 is in play. And then obviously you would assume that Rodgers would, his passing yards would also be around that range. And then to close it out, I'll just like throw in that James Cook over rushing and receiving, kind of with the same thing where we can cover our bases both ways, where if the Bills do get up big and they get into a positive game script where the Jets are having to throw a lot and then they just hand the ball off to James Cook on the other end, or if the Jets do keep things close for a while and we do see Rodgers kind of dueling a little bit, we still have that covered with James Cook's receiving yards where he is going to be involved in the game regardless of the script. And so I think all those things working in our favor at plus 430, I think it's like pretty nice odds for this, especially when we're looking at taking an alt spread where we're knocking that down a little bit.
Yeah, that alt spread again, -6.5 for the Bills. Aaron Rodgers over 222.5 passing yards. James Cook over 77.5 rushing plus receiving yards. That is plus 436 at FanDuel Sportsbook for that 3-leg same game parlay. I think the Bills are going to push pretty hard here. I agree with your thought on that because I don't want to play Baltimore in the playoffs. And that's what's on the line here with the 2 seed. So I think we're going to see a full effort. You know, like Josh Allen said, they're not going to show their full playbook, but they don't need to cover a 6.5 point spread at home against the Jets. So I'm on board with that as well. Again, Bills -6.5, Aaron Rodgers over 222.5 passing yards, James Cook over 77.5 rushing plus receiving yards plus 436 at FanDuel Sportsbook. That is all that we have here for today on covering the spread. Big thank you once again to Aidan Cotter for joining us here today, breaking down his thoughts on the Week 17 player prop markets. Aidan, good luck to you across Week 17. Hopefully the football picks up over the next couple of days, and we'll talk to you once again here soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on again, Jim, and enjoy the second to last week of regular season football.
That is a scary sentence to hear. You can find Aidan on X at AidanCotterFD. He is on Blue Sky at Aidan Cotter. I am on X and Blue Sky at JimSannes. You can also find FanDuel Research on X at FanDuel Research. Reminder, we're coming back at you once again, noon Eastern today, breaking down NFL DFS Week 17. That is on the YouTube page with Brandon Gadula and myself breaking down our thoughts on this week's slate. YouTube, turn on notifications there. Leave us a thumbs up. We appreciate those of you as always. Big thank you to our YouTube producer, Justin Lane, for his work on the video side of things. Thank you, Justin, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Enjoy Week 17 slate, both Saturday and Sunday. We'll talk to you once again Monday. We're talking college football playoff quarterfinals with Austin Swaim. This has been Covering the Spread, a FanDuel Research podcast.